Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Let's try it again.
1, 2, 3. I think it's because there's a delay through the footage. So if you go through the footage, it's pretty weird, right? There's got to be a delay, I think.
Okay, let's try it one more time so I can actually see you. All right.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, that should work.
Yeah, it's good enough. We can do it.
Okay. Hello, everybody. My name's Kyle Broxterman.
And I'm Max Carrier.
And this is the Climbing Majority Podcast. So, Max, let's just kind of have an open discussion here. Why did we create this podcast?
We created this podcast because we think there's definitely misrepresentation in the eyes of the media when it comes to the climbing community. And we want to address what we would call the climbing majority, which is the majority of people who are the non-professional climbers out there, going on adventures, climbing, enjoying the outdoors. And we really wanted to connect with that community and those people.
For sure. I totally agree. That phrase kind of brings me back to the moment that I thought about this podcast in terms of its infancy. I posted an accident report from an incident that I had, and I tapped into these two groups of people. I had this kind of older generation group of climbers that were here during the golden age. You know, climbing gyms really weren't a thing, and they had all these first ascents to themselves, and it was this really magical time for them. And I really feel for the experience that they had. But, you know, with climbing hitting mainstream media today, Olympics, Alex Honnold posting these Golden Globe and Grammy winning awarding movies, climbing is really reaching a lot more people than it ever has before. And there's so many more people that have access to the sport. And I feel like it is breeding this new climbing majority. And there's a lot of people that are moving from the gyms and moving outside. I mean, just for myself, I came from a gym. Alex Honnold came from a gym. I think, Max, you came from a gym as well. Is that correct?
Sure did. Yep.
Yeah. So there's this giant group of people that are coming out to the outdoors with this stoke and this excitement. And I think a lot of people, especially the older generation, view this new climbing majority with a bit of disdain. And I think that's a bit sad. I think that there's a lot of people who bring a lot of cool adventure and great positivity to the sport that just get overlooked. And this whole podcast is about bringing light to these people like you and me, Max, bringing the adventures and the stories and the lessons learned from these new climbers, and really giving a platform for people to share their experiences.
Yeah, for sure. Really well said, Kyle. Also, I think we definitely want to address that climbing is for everybody, and there's more to climbing than just being a pro and climbing extremely hard. And I know for myself, I've definitely succumbed to negative thoughts or anxiety, or been self-conscious climbing at the gym or the crag. And yeah, just really want to explore like those ideas, why that is, and also just try and reach out, like we said, to that community.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great place. That's basically just the summary of this podcast. And we hope you all enjoy. You know, this is going to be a journey. This is our first podcast we've ever created, and this is going to be kind of a bit of trial and error. So sit back and be with us along this journey. We got some exciting stuff planned for you. We really are taking this to heart, and we really are excited about this project. And so, you know, we hope that you're excited as well. And, you know, we really hope that you get into it just like we are getting into it as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, I think that, you know, with the idea of the podcast presented, I think it's time to introduce the creators, you know, Max and Kyle. So we'll start with Max. We'll start with kind of a little bit of questions so we all can understand who he is as a climber and a person. So let's just start with Max Carrier. Where are you from?
I am from Horseshoe Bay, grew up in Horseshoe Bay, and still living in Horseshoe Bay.
Where is Horseshoe Bay?
Yeah, so Horseshoe Bay is in West Vancouver, British Columbia. So I'm Canadian, obviously. Yeah, it's a beautiful little kind of bay. There's a ferry terminal. There's lots of coffee shops. It's a really nice area. And it's right on the Sea to Sky Highway, which is this kind of scenic highway that goes through the mountains. And you have this beautiful vista kind of view of Howe Sound and all these, which is essentially an inlet from the ocean. And there's all these islands. And that takes you on the way to Squamish and Whistler. So, beautiful area, lots of mountains, great skiing, climbing, all that jazz.
Nice. You're just surrounded by the goodies, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. It's an adventure playground.
Nice. And, what's your family kind of like? Was your family adventurous?
Yeah. So grew up here, little kind of duplex we grew up in. I would say like normal family, great mom and dad, really great older brother, Zach. He's an awesome guy. Yeah, so we grew up tight family. My mom was definitely the adventurous kind of outdoorsy one. She was really good at skiing. She skied ski patrol at Whistler for a couple years and stuff.
Nice, that's really cool.
Yeah, so she was kind of my inspiration, I'll say, and got me into the outdoors and all that.
Has your older brother climb as well?
He does not climb, no. So he climbed a little bit and stuff, but he's into the outdoors and camping and off-roading and all that kind of stuff, but he is not a climber.
Okay, cool. What about kind of your early childhood, like preteens? Were you super into sports? Were you, how early on did you get exposed to the outdoors?
Yeah, we've been camping, more so car camping and stuff from a really young age. So that was something that we did a lot. Growing up, I played I think I tried so many different sports. I did like field hockey, karate. I did soccer for a lot of years. And I played hockey pretty competitively for a lot of years as well, too. And then I did various other martial arts and stuff. So I've been really athletic my whole life and into sports. So that's been a huge part of my life.
Nice. What about school? Like, were you super dedicated to school? Did you drop out of college, or, were you an honors student, or, did that adventurous kind of side of your life kick in early on and distract you from school, or did school kind of play a big part in your life?
Yeah, I would say early on, I would self-diagnose myself as ADHD, psychopath, devil child. So that's quite the determination for the listeners. Yeah, that's my own personal diagnosis. But I was just this crazy, rambunctious, really wild kid. I always learned doing things physically or being shown. So needless to say, sitting in a classroom wasn't really my forte. And I definitely had so many difficulties and troubles going through school. I actually dropped out of high school when I was in grade 9, and then went back and then dropped out again in like grade 11 for a lot of different reasons. Man. There was a lot of really bad stuff happening in my life at the time.
Yikes.
And then I actually just recently got my dogwood diploma, and I'm currently going to university. So that's kind of totally flipped that on its head. But no, I was not on honor rolls as a child. Yeah.
Oh man. So, you went through a little bit of a tumultuous period. What about after high school? What happened after that?
Yeah, after high school, I ended up working with various construction and demolition companies. And then I ended up getting a weight room training certificate and worked at a nutrition store, which I ended up managing the store actually for about 4 years. So that was a pretty interesting period in my life and stuff, just working and doing various jobs, and then eventually ending up at that nutrition store. And yeah, it was a great period, and pretty fond of that time and stuff, and was really, really big into the gym, mainly like powerlifting and bodybuilding at the time. Mm-hmm. And I kind of turned myself into this, big meathead. So
were your parents still together at this point?
Yeah, they were together and everything at that point and stuff. So nice. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
totally.
you're a meathead. You're super into bodybuilding. What turned you to climbing? What changed that focus?
Yeah. So my mother actually passed away of cancer, and she got diagnosed when I was in high school. So that was part of that tumultuous time and stuff. I was going through a lot, and so eventually she passed away in 2018, and I quit the job I was working at the time, which was a logistics coordinator for a construction company, and I ended up just going to this place, Mountain Equipment Co-op, which is this huge retailer in Canada. It's been around forever. It's a co-op. Unfortunately, it isn't anymore. That could be a whole other long story to any Canadians listening. I'm sure you're very familiar with MEC because it's been kind of a Canadian institution forever. But yeah, I started working with them, and I just got really big into a lot of athletics. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do fully. It was a definitely confusing period of time in my life, and my mother just passed away. And so I actually got an opportunity to do some run guiding with the company, and I ended up doing running guiding with them, leading various clinics and running clinics and lots of different kind of work like that, probably for about a year and a half. And that kind of set me off in kind of rekindling what I would say my old athletic spirit. So I ended up running quite a few marathons. I did a couple Grand Fondos. I did an ultra marathon. I did my first Ironman, which I self-coached myself and a friend through, and we both did really well in that. So it was this really interesting period of kind of working for Mountain Equipment Co-op and then doing a huge amount of athletics. And then through all that, I met someone at the store, this really nice guy, Terry Louie, and he was really into climbing. And he was kind of asking me, he heard that I wanted to get out and start trying climbing. And it was like the middle of winter, like December, January, and he was like, "Well, I'm going to go ice climbing. Like, do you want to come?" And I was just like, "Yeah, like I totally want to come. Like that sounds unreal, And lo and behold, we went and did that, and it was just this unbelievable, eye-opening, profound experience to just be out in nature. And I'd never experienced the world like that, or just the kind of the confidence and the sense of adventure and all the learning. And it was just this really eye-opening, engaging experience that just completely, I would say, changed my life and just set me on the path that I am now, or more close to it. It just, making climbing a huge part of my life.
That's awesome. That whole story just puts a grin on my face. Just the idea of, being exposed to climbing as ice climbing as the first time is awesome. Ice climbing, I think in America it's a fringe sport for sure. And it's hard to find ice that's good here in America unless you really know where to look. It's definitely not just like in your backyard. So it's definitely a cool situation that you found yourself in. I think you told me that you had climbed Rainier. Tell me a little bit about that story.
Yeah, that was a really interesting day, actually. A friend of mine and we were both working at the store till like 9 p.m. And then we drove down to Washington and arrived at I think it was like 2 a.m., slept like 3 hours, woke up, climbed to Camp Muir on Mount Rainier, with like totally loaded packs and everything like that. And then we just kind of chilled out there through the night. And there was it was the windiest I've ever experienced in my life. Like no other parties went and summited the day we went up or anything. So the tent we had, it would the roof would literally go from fully expanded all the way down, pushed into your face, because there was 80-kilometer-an-hour gusts of wind that could actually bowl you over. And so me and my buddy Nathan, we just woke up and we were like, well, we're just gonna go for it and try and go until we have to turn around. And I'd never walked in nighttime with sunglasses on, but had to do that because there's so much particulate in the air. It was like razor blades hitting you in the face. And inevitably we ended up having this huge day and running out of water and, climbing, and we made it to the top, to the dome. And it was just the strongest wind I've ever experienced, and just unbelievably beautiful and scenic. And for anybody listening who hasn't been on, not that this is on the world stage, a very large mountain, but it's a pretty big mountain. And when you get mountains big enough like that, when the sun rises, it actually kind of arcs out the shadow of the mountain across the horizon. and the sun and stuff. And it's just so beautiful and unreal. And that was just, I remember as well too, that experience was just so cool. And it was really funny, actually. By the time we got back to the car, we were like just walking close to it, and I saw this like lady who was in the parking lot, and I was just walking by her, and I was like, "Oh, hi there," and she just looked at me like I was like some insane person or psychopath, and I was like, "Oh, that was super rude." And then I get to the car and crack like the beer that I had waiting for me, and I look in the window, and my face is like plastered in a thick layer of white sunscreen, and there's like snots coming out of my nose, and I just looked like this like demented psychopath. And I was like, oh, okay, like that makes more sense, you know? So yeah.
Oh man, that's a good story. Again, puts a smile on my face. There's nothing more magical than standing up upon a mountain either at sunset or sunrise. It's life-changing. So it's definitely, thank you for bringing that back to my memory.
Yeah, my pleasure.
So, how far along was that journey, between when you first went out with Terry?
Yeah, so I started climbing with Terry around December, January area, and Rainier would have been kind of more so in the spring. So you're probably looking at like 4 to 6 months area. I can't remember the exact date. I'd have to.
That's still a pretty quick jump, I would say, between your first ice climb and tackling one of America's biggest mountains.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
But now, where are you kind of now compared to where you were when you first started climbing?
Yeah, I mean, now I definitely am just trying to invest a lot of time and energy into just educating myself, and I would say becoming the best mountain athlete that I can become for myself, and also just being able to get out and enjoy the outdoors as much as possible. So just trying to remove ego from the equation. I'm definitely the furthest thing possible from a professional climber, to say the least, but I don't think that diminishes my experience or love for the sport, or any of the knowledge that I have to pass on. So yeah, like climbing is just really meaningful. It's beautiful. I just want to find climbs and things that are really engaging, and I just want to get out and enjoy I would say the beautiful province that I live in, or just, anywhere in the world where I can go climb would be really awesome.
Nice. Yeah, that's well said. So we kind of come into a conclusion here with the introduction to Max Carrier. What kind of stemmed the creation of this podcast and how we met? I'll give you a little bit of spoiler. It definitely was an injury. We do talk about Max's injury in the following episode, but give me a quick little teaser about what happened to you.
Yeah. Long story made short. I was essentially climbing with my girlfriend, and I took unsuspecting fall on some pretty easy lower class terrain and slid into a rock, and I ended up breaking both my ankles, and that was quite an ordeal, and obviously has dictated a lot about how the last 4 or 5 months of my life have been. But strangely enough, I was actually one day just cruising Instagram with my broken ankles, and I had saw a climber who I followed by the name of Broxterman, who had posted a really great accident report on Reddit about the fact that he broke both of his ankles. And I thought, wow, this is just unbelievable, and kind of, I guess fortuitous would be the wrong word, but I was like, I got to reach out and connect with this guy. And I ended up doing that. And yeah, now, the rest is just history. So I think that's a great segue into, maybe Kyle, give us a little introduction and some backstory about yourself, like where are you from, Kyle?
I was born in Palo Alto, California, and then moved to San Diego when I was about 9 months old.
Did you grow up with your mom and dad, or you got any siblings?
Yeah, so I'm the oldest of my family, not only of my siblings, but of all my cousins as well. So I am the forger of the path. I am the one who leads the way and makes all the mistakes. And, I am the oldest of 2 brothers. I have 2 younger brothers, Trent and Curtis. And, my family was very close. My mom and dad, very close. My dad worked in the tech industry, and he worked most of his life, 40 plus hours a week, and, made good money and provided for us as a family, which was really nice, and allowed us to have vacations and to have a nice place and to, have the luxuries of a typical American household, I would say. So yeah, that was kind of like my childhood. Just the typical cookie cutter suburban lifestyle with two younger brothers.
What are your younger brothers' names?
Trent and Curtis.
Sweet. Yeah. So, how about yourself? Like, growing up in school, were you on the honor rolls?
Yeah, I was. Throughout the younger ages of my life, I took, I consider myself a little bit of a social outcast. I didn't have a lot of social skills. I didn't have an older sibling to model myself after. And so I don't know, I wasn't really that socially inclined. And so I kind of just became an awkward kid and focused on schoolwork. And within high school, I started taking honors and AP classes pretty early on. I was at a charter school, so I think we had a total student body of 400 kids between every single class, which is really small. And so it was a really tight community, and we were all a bunch of nerds. And it was like a funny thing to look back on, but I really am grateful for the experience I had there because it was very much academia focused, and I learned a lot there. I honestly feel like I probably learned more in my years in high school than I did in college.
Wow. Well, that's not a good selling point for whatever college you went to.
Well, I mean, I'll preface that with saying that I only went to a year of college. So, if 4 years bests out the first year of college, that probably makes sense because the first year of college is all GE anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess like segueing from there of how you grew up and going to school and all that stuff. So obviously, like, this podcast is about climbing. So, for you, why climbing? What is climbing to you?
I started out adventuring as a little kid because of my dad. He was very much an outdoorsman. He was in the Air Force, and he liked camping and off-roading. And so we would spend at least once a year going out to Joshua Tree National Park in California. It's a big high elevation desert area with a bunch of granite rocks everywhere. It literally looks like, whether you believe in God or not, it looks like God took these boulders and just like stacked them on top of each other in this giant playground. It's really, really magical place. And so I spent a lot of my childhood, at least my outdoor time as a child, in that area. And while I wasn't actually roped climbing, I spent a lot of time hiking, exploring, practicing navigation, driving an off-road vehicle, and scrambling, using my hands and feet on granite to move around, stemming, chimneying, jumping from rock to rock. My dad even would put me through these like Slurpee jumps, he would call them. And, if I were to make this jump across this crazy, pitfall, I would get a sugar high at the end of the trip. And so I risked a lot for those Slurpees. But I think that in the end, it definitely taught me a lot about managing risk and controlling my own fears and really pushing myself to the limit. And it's funny, a lot of this stuff, even though it wasn't focused around climbing, transferred into climbing in my modern day life. But I didn't start actually climbing until I was about 25, which is really late. I really do wish that I had started climbing earlier on. My first introductory to climbing was at a climbing gym. My dad just took me, thought it was fun at a local Solid Rock here in Southern California. And I was really weak. I was a cross country athlete most of my life. So mostly focused on endurance and didn't really focus on upper body strength at all. I definitely wasn't playing football or anything like that. And so I had no idea how to move my body on a vertical plane and just kind of like chuckled at it. I remember as a kid, even at Joshua Tree, seeing other climbers and was like mocking them. Like, how could you stay in one place for so long? It's so boring. Like, I think scrambling's so much better. Just being like totally prude about it. But yeah, I started climbing at a bouldering gym called Vital in Carlsbad. And that's when I really started to dive into the movement of climbing. I had recently, dedicated myself to some bodybuilding techniques for about a year and a half. So I developed an upper body strength, and I was able to transfer that into climbing. And something about it just really clicked. I had a natural ability towards it. I was able to really catch on really fast. And I quickly moved from my local bouldering gym to a gym in the area called Mesa Rim, which is a world-class gym, 55-foot, 60-foot lead walls. They have a crazy infrastructure of coaches and classes. And so the second I walked into that gym, I was obsessed and fell completely in love with the sport and completely dedicated myself to taking it seriously and not just like, oh, I'm just going to keep climbing in the gym. I'm like, okay, it's time to climb outside. I need to take this outside. So I got a credit card, racked myself into debt with a full new rack, and took the lead course, took the anchor course, and quickly just like took all these skills I learned at the gym and took it outside and started just like dedicating my life towards learning how to climb outside.
Yeah, super cool. Really interesting, and I think such a common thing of like starting off in the gym, right? And it was funny when you said you're climbing at 25. I was like, oh yeah, you has been, and then I was like, that's exactly pretty much when I started climbing. Yeah, and so I guess like that gives like a really good foray into your climbing experience and everything. And so, how many years have you been climbing for now? You said 6, right?
Yeah, I've been climbing for, time is flying by at this point. I've probably almost been climbing for 7 years now.
Yeah. So I guess, with that information, what now? What is climbing to you, and where do you see it going? And so,
yeah, I spent the first 6 years of my climbing career, I spent, I didn't spend much time with a mentor. I maybe spent like 1 or 2 days, literally 1 or 2 days with a mentor, learning their knowledge. And then I immediately took that on my own and started leading with that knowledge and bringing people up with me. So I kind of like took 2 days of mentorship and turned myself into a mentor for the social peer group around me. And I immediately started dragging people up these multi-pitch climbs on Talkeets up in Idlewild. And I just like leaned into my athletic ability without a focus on the gear. I knew how to place gear. I knew how to build an anchor. I knew how to do it relatively safely. But did I have a well-rounded knowledge of gear? And like, did I ever bounce test gear or aid climb? No, not even close. I was just like, I basically understood the theoretical physics of the pieces, and that was it. And I just led with it. And I got lucky. I got super lucky. I had a lot of really close calls in my first year of trad climbing, and we definitely talk about an episode about the first year of trad climbing in the few episodes coming up, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, a lot of really close calls and just some scary stuff. But I'm here today. And, I as a mentor leading other people, that basically means that I can only climb at my on-site limit for the most part, if I want to climb safe. And so that's what I did for 6 years. I climbed it. I led every pitch that I climbed for the most part for 6 years. Every single climb, I was the sharp end. I led the pitch. I was the one bringing it, our party up the mountain. And so it was a really cool experience to have, and I'm very grateful for it. But it also kept me in this realm of playing relatively safe and climbing, 10s, some 11s, mostly 10s, especially leading trad for the majority of my 6 years. And, about a few months before us talking here, I got to this point, a big change in my life where I was ready to break out of the 10s. I was ready to break out of, being stuck in that realm. I was ready to break through and start leading 11s and pushing the grades and taking falls and assuming more risk. And that mindset really kind of put me in a bad situation. And that's where I am today. So, we do talk about my accident in some further episodes. I did take a pretty nasty fall on trad. I was pushing the limit a little bit, took on way too much risk, and didn't put enough thought into the gear I was climbing above. And ultimately it resulted in a ground fall and shattered calcaneus and a whole life change. So yeah, it's in reference to where my climbing is now. That's basically where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think that's a pretty good segue to, like, you know, kind of just wrap things up here. And, you know, thanks a lot for sharing with that. I know something that really resonated with me from the way I met you through online and stuff is you're really authentic and really open and just sharing your experiences and stuff. And I think that's really something to commemorate, and really awesome that you just have been like that and are doing that. So, you know, thanks so much for sharing, Kyle.
Yeah, man, definitely feel the raw and real experience of climbing should be shared more. Did you find me based off my Instagram, or did you find me based off my Reddit post?
I think I was already following you on Instagram and saw you sick. Post. You were like accident report, and then I went to Reddit and just looked it up, and that's how it happened. Okay, and I was just like, oh, no way, like this guy.
Yeah, it can happen to anybody, you know. And that's like, again, if we circle back to the whole creation of this podcast, is the one thing I learned about the injury is that it happens to a lot more people than I ever suspected. You know, my first 6 years of climbing, I didn't hear about injuries almost at all. And that was probably my own problem, because I didn't search for it. But I think that it probably is a common issue. And I think that it's really important for everybody to know just how common climbing injuries are. And especially as this new wave of climbers enter the market, as you could say, of trad climbing, there's just going to be more situations like this that occur. And I think that it's our job of people who have already gone through it to share our experiences as real and raw as possible, so that people can avoid it in the future. Because I mean, hell, I'll say it. If I could redo it, if I could redo it, maybe I would not do it again, because it was so painful and it sucked so bad. But I've turned it into such a good thing that it's really hard for me to say that at this point. But I think that giving people the knowledge and the intelligence to try to avoid it to their best ability moving forward is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said, Kyle. I don't know if I want to redo it, but yeah, there aren't enough Slurpees in the world to convince me to do that.
Yeah, it's a Slurpee jump you'll never want to take.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to have to invent a new size of Slurpee.
Oh, that's good.
Thanks so much for listening, everybody, today. We really appreciate you tuning in and listening to, the Meet the Creator episode here with Kyle and myself. In the future, we're going to be pushing out more content, and we really hope that you guys will become a part of this community and engage with us. All of our information, whether for myself or for Kyle, will be provided in the links if you want to try and get a hold of us, communicate with us. Please give us a like, share, and follow. I'm Max Carrier.
And I'm Kyle Broxterman.
This is The Climbing Majority. Thanks so much for listening, guys and girls.